Today's tale concerns the Marchioness of a noble house. On her deathbed, her adopted heir gestured toward a maidservant, kneeling outside, and declared, "Mother, I've found your flesh and blood at last. Now I shall make your daughter serve as my sister's slave." The shock killed her, but death wasn't the end. She awoke to find herself back in time. This time round, she sees through the lot of them, the scheming household, the false smiles, the whole rotten charade. No more playing the dutiful wife. This time, she is rewriting the script, and her daughter's getting the happy ending she deserves, come hell or high water. In the 15th year of being the Marquis Manor's main wife, I was beyond medical help. Before my death, my husband had the legitimate son registered under my name attend to me with medicine. Mother, let me tell you some good news. Your own flesh and blood, I've already found them. In my final moments, I followed where he pointed and saw a girl kneeling outside the door. She had been punished by the old madam to kneel outside for supposedly offending me, his biological sister's maidservant. Mother, back then you refused to adopt my sister and wouldn't let her enter the manor. Now, I am going to make your biological daughter my sister's slave. Rage attacked my heart, and when I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of registering the legitimate son. Looking at that familiar young face below, my hand suspended in the air, about to point, paused, and ultimately made the same choice as last time. Joyful voices gradually rose, and the child kneeling below called me Mother with an adoring face. I didn't look at him, but turned my head to meet Xiao Wenyan's gaze beside me. Xiao Wenyan looked no different from my memory, still with a face like fine jade and eyes like bright stars. You really couldn't tell he was already past 30. He inherited his title young and had a smooth career. The only thing the people in the capital could criticize was probably at his age. He still had no legitimate son. The mocking whispers among the capital's people reached the manor, and thus came the current situation. I still remember how my heart was filled with guilt in my previous life, because I truly hadn't given Xiao Wenyan a legitimate son. I was pregnant with a daughter and had a difficult labor when giving birth, so my body was ruined after that, and I could never have children again. So I took the initiative to take in a concubine for him and pushed for the concubine's son to be registered under my name. Recalling the past, I felt somewhat dazed. Mother, this concubine-born son had already performed the ceremonial bow to me and Xiao Wenyan, and was now offering me tea. I lowered my head to look at the tea and reached out to take it. Me downcast eyes were filled with coldness. There is no need to involve others anymore. I gazed at the fragrant tea with steam rising from it. Though the tea hasn't changed, I know everything is already different. The tea sat on the table until it turned completely cold. Then I got up and led my people back to the courtyard. The new year had just passed, still in the first month, and even from half an inner courtyard away, the sound of firecrackers outside could be heard. I sat before the mirror, meeting the gaze of my slightly weary reflection, as if a lifetime had passed. A light rain began to fall outside, and my poor daughter was lost on the Lantern Festival day in a sudden downpour. That rain fell heavily and urgently. The crowd pushed and shoved, seeking shelter, separating me from the nursemaid holding my daughter. In that moment of looking away, she could never be found again. That night, Xiao Wenyan held me, soaking wet, watching as I prayed to every god and Buddha in the heavens throughout the night. Unfortunately, even the deployment of the Imperial Guard didn't bring good news back then. After that, I fell ill and became dependent on medicine, never recovering again. During that time, perhaps because Xiao Wenyan saw me suffering too much, he actually brought a girl back from outside. Madam could register Rara under your name and treat her as an adopted daughter. When he said this, it was also a rainy day. I didn't register this girl under my name and couldn't even keep her in the manor. Perhaps seeing my firm attitude, Xiao Wenyan eventually sent her away. My health deteriorated day by day. The old madam couldn't stand seeing me so lifeless and unable to continue the family line for the Marquis Manor. So she brought Pei Wan to the manor. Pei Wan was Xiao Wenyan's cousin. She had previously married a military man and had a child, but later became a widow. The new dynasty encouraged remarriage, so the old madam thought of her. When Xiao Wenyan married me, he swore to my parents and brothers that he wouldn't consider taking a concubine until 30 without a son. And as long as there was a child, even a daughter, he wouldn't add another person to the inner courtyard. I remembered how he looked kneeling before my parents. But our daughter was gone, and I could no longer bear children. Even if I really held on until he turned 30, what difference would it make? Pei Wan entered the manor after all. Within 3 months, good news came from her courtyard. At that time, although I was depressed, I also felt relieved that things had finally settled. After Pei Wan's months were complete, she even personally took her to the temple to fulfill her vow. But I didn't expect that there. I saw the person who almost became my adopted daughter. She affectionately took Pei Wan's arm and called Pei Wan mother. I knew about this matter, mother told me. Cousin was widowed at the time, struggling to raise a daughter alone, and it just so happened that Xiao Wenyan's words came to an abrupt halt because of my sudden turn of expression. Madam, before you brought cousin to me, I never had any other thoughts about her. Xiao Wenyan swore to the heavens. Because of this, the girl called Rewa was not allowed by him to live in the Marquis's residence. He only found a separate courtyard outside to keep her. And even when Pei Wan wanted to see her later, she could only go out of the residence with her pregnant belly to find her. Seeing this, I stopped pressing him further. A few months later, Pei Wan gave birth to a son. The old madam doted on him to the extreme, completely different from how she sat like a closed-eyed bodhisattva, unconcerned with worldly affairs when treating my daughter back then. Having become a meritorious person, the old madam granted her every request, at most only holding back on some particular matters, because of me, until Pei Wan's son could talk, and called out sister in front of the old madam. The rule that Rear was not allowed to enter the residence was broken. I said, visiting is fine, but living in the residence, no. Perhaps the old madam didn't expect me to be so resolute. She wanted to hold me accountable, but then she met my gaze. Perhaps because she was also a mother, she ultimately said nothing more. Xiao Wenyan made no comment on this, but over the years, he began frequenting Pei Wan's courtyard. The child's laughter echoed through the manor as he enjoyed the pleasures of family life. Me courtyard gradually lost its vitality, leaving only the bitter smell of medicine and painful coughing. When that concubine's son turned 12, he was registered under my name, gaining the status of a legitimate heir. I had no energy to discipline him. Too many people were protecting him like the apple of their eye. I just never expected that when he grew up, he would actually come to me with a request. Xiao Muyuan knelt in the hall, his attitude sincere. Mother, I've found a woman I love, and I wish to marry her. Without parental arrangement or matchmaker's words, he confessed his feelings for that girl to me. He and a group of classmates went to the mountains for inspiration, and when they encountered danger along the way, it was that woman who saved him. Even if she is just a commoner, a hunter's daughter, I still want to marry her as my proper wife. The rain fell in a gentle drizzle. I didn't agree to his request at that time. In noble households, it is always vermilion gates. Matching vermilion gates, bamboo gates matching bamboo gates. It is not that no one breaks this rule. It is just too rare. Xiao Wenyan had just obtained an imperial decree making him the heir of the Marquis Manor, and now he wanted to give the position of his legal wife to a hunter's daughter raised in the mountains. The Xiao family will become the laughingstock of the capital once again. Xiao Muyuan shuffled forward on his knees, his gaze burning, as he looked at me. Then would a favored concubine be acceptable? I still didn't nod. A man with an unclean backyard, how could he seek a harmonious wife in the future? Me maiden family even has a rule that men can only take another consort after 30 if they have no sons. Xiao Muyuan's expression became even more earnest. He kowtowed directly to me, saying he truly loved her and would have no one else. His eyes seemed to burn with fierce flames, his urgent manner as if pressing me to say more. Looking at him kneeling below, I finally spoke. Since she saved you, why must you repay kindness with enmity? From what he said, he was very grateful to that girl. Being able to rescue someone in a dense forest, that girl must have extraordinary skills. With such abilities, why must Xiao Muyuan drag her into circumstances she is not suited for, burying all her talents in a noble family's inner courtyard? As long as she wasn't brought in, with the Marquise's household as backing, her future prospects should be bright. Xiao Muyuan's expression changed as he knelt below. Something seemed to appear in the way he looked at me, and the smile on his face froze. Seeing that I wouldn't allow it, he actually went to plead with the old madam. Until later, even Xiao Wenyan learned of this matter. I thought that girl was really going to be tormented by them. But unexpectedly, Xiao Wenyan, who was still persuading me the night before to fulfill his son's wish, came back the next day and never mentioned this matter again. I asked out of curiosity. Unexpectedly, Xiao Wenyan's face changed again and again, turning from red to pale as he said, "That wretched son, madam, let's not speak of this matter again." I thought the matter would end there. Unexpectedly, after some time, Xiao Muyuan came to find me again. As if reporting something to me, he told me that the girl who saved him, although she wasn't taken into the manor as his concubine, her father had an accident some days ago. They spent all their family fortune trying to save him, but couldn't. Her shoulder was injured, and she can never pick up a bow and arrow again. So she took the initiative to find your son, selling herself into slavery, hoping your son would bury her father. I was shocked. You took her as a slave. Xiao Muyuan smiled and shook his head. Your son wouldn't dare. Father ordered me not to have any more ideas about her. I hadn't even breathed a sigh of relief yet. So I gave her to Sister Ru, making her Sister Ru's slave. He actually treated his life-saving benefactor like this. I looked at the person below, the one who had claimed, "I'll marry no one but her" just a while ago. Now so casually having her registered as a slave, an inexplicable chill rose in my heart. I voiced my question, but Xiao Muyuan looked surprised at this moment. What kind of joke is mother making? I am the legitimate heir of the Marquis Manor. Our statuses are worlds apart. I can't marry her. Grandmother has already explained everything to me. Besides, she is just a lonely orphan girl now. Even if she wanted to be my concubine, she wouldn't be worthy. Xiao Muyuan completely changed his previous stance. I found it bizarre after hearing this. But when I sent someone to find Heir and bring back that girl's indenture contract, the old madam blocked me. You never cared about Rua's affairs before, so there is no need to start now. As long as my grandson is happy. Or does this mother really want to see him marry that orphan girl with his position as heir? After being warned like this, though I felt frustrated, I still went to find Xiao Wenyan. How could a life-saving grace be repaid by selling oneself into slavery? Xiao Wenyan left the room with my request, but a day later he came back and started using his mother's words to persuade me not to interfere anymore. If you can't bear to see her suffer, why not just let Rua move into the manor? It is safer at home after all. Rua certainly won't mistreat Muyuan's life-saving benefactor. After all, they're blood siblings. Xiao Wenyan persuaded me like this. Thinking of that girl, I eventually agreed. My health was already failing anyway, and I couldn't manage too many things. The household affairs had already been handed over to Pei Wan to manage. Out of consideration that I didn't want to see Miss Ru, they never appeared before me. I could only occasionally hear the maids below say a word or two, Miss Rue treats Jua so well. A few days ago, when she broke the glazed cup that the master had gifted, she only punished her by not letting her eat for 2 days. And by this time, I was already too sick to get out of bed. One day, I vaguely heard the sound of porcelain shattering outside, followed by scolding. Then silence returned. After, I fell seriously ill. Xiao Wenyan had Xiao Muyuan come to attend to me. Before long, Xiao Muyuan came back in carrying a bowl of medicine. I asked what had happened. Xiao Muyuan blew on the medicine and said to me, "Nothing major, just a servant outside who knocked over mother's medicine and was seen by grandmother, who punished her to kneel outside." It was rare for him to speak so carefully. I said listlessly, "Let her get up." Xiao Muyuan refused. How could that be? After all, that clueless one offended mother. He wouldn't listen to me, but I had no strength left. The bitter medicine entered my mouth. The scalding liquid going down my throat drained a bit more of my energy. Xiao Muyuan's voice suddenly echoed in my ears at that moment. "Speaking of which, there is some good news I haven't told Mother. Your own flesh and blood, this child has already found them for you." I reopened my nearly closed eyes, not knowing where the strength came from, my eyes fixed on him intently. Xiao Muyuan set down the medicine bowl and pointed outside with his hand. "Look, isn't she kneeling right there? Consider it filial piety to you." His tone carried a smile, but I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. A light rain began to fall outside, and in the curtain of rain, apart from one figure, no one else was kneeling. The direction his finger pointed fell squarely on that girl. The hazy rain fell on her head and shoulders. "It was Jua, madam? Why are you crying?" Summoning came up from behind. It was Xiao Wenyan. His tone carried pity, and he reached out to wipe the tear stains from my face. I turned my head to avoid him. He thought I was upset about Xiao Muyuan's matter, so he began to coax me softly. "Don't worry, madam. Muyuan will definitely be filial to you in the future." I didn't want to dwell on the joke in his words, just stared into his eyes. I couldn't forget what Xiao Muyuan said to me before I died. At that time, I thought Xiao Muyuan had gone mad. I wanted to get up from the bed, go outside to grab my daughter, and then find Xiao Wenyan. Xiao Muyuan pushed me back onto the bed. His words were like demonic whispers piercing my ears. "Mother, guess does father know that Jua is his daughter? Guess does grandmother know that Jua is her granddaughter? What a pity, they found out too early, so I couldn't bring Jua into the manor. Back then, to put your mind at ease, I even prepared the sterilization medicine. Those filthy things would never crawl out of Jua's belly." Xiao Muyuan waved his hand in front of his nose, as if he really smelled something. I collapsed on the bed, and suddenly Xiao Wenyan's face, flushed with anger, flashed through my mind. "Mother, back then, you wouldn't let my sister enter the manor. No, I want your daughter to be my sister's slave. Jua really brings good luck. With her as a slave, my sister was able to smoothly enter the manor. Mother, you really gave birth to a good daughter." That voice, carrying a malicious smile, followed me back to this moment. I looked at Xiao Wenyan, yet thought of the old madam. She had wanted Rawa to enter the manor back then, but later, seeing my firm attitude, she gave up. I thought when she met my eyes, the flash in them was the empathy of a fellow mother. But thinking about it now, it seems that wasn't it. What was she feeling guilty about? Before Jua entered the manor, what did she have to feel guilty toward me about? My hands hidden under my sleeves clenched tightly, so hard that my nails seemed to dig into my flesh. Xiao Wenyan stepped closer, not angry at my earlier avoidance. "Today is also a good day," he said, as rain wet the windowsill. "Madam, rest assured, even if Muyuan becomes our child, I won't give up searching for Yinzhao. Stone conceals jade and the mountain shines. I took this meaning to name my daughter Yinzhao." Looking at it now, Xiao Wenyan and Xiao Muyuan indeed both kept this promise. They found my daughter, and then humiliated and degraded her like this. I didn't share a room with Xiao Wenyan because right now I really can't stand this sanctimonious face appearing before me. I was afraid I'd act on impulse and couldn't hold back from striking him. That way, not only would I only be able to kill him alone, but it would also ruin my upcoming reunion with my daughter. At dawn, I set off back to my maiden home. They welcomed me in, but worried that the Xiao family had just recognized their legitimate son yesterday, and now I had run back, which would inevitably invite criticism from some people. But I couldn't care about all that anymore. I could indeed have left a few days later. I could even have just sent them a letter, asking them to help me find my daughter, but being so cautious about everything. What did I get? Your mother. She was a virtuous woman. Xiao Wenyan had said such things to Xiao Muyuan. This virtue ultimately led to my miserable death, and even dragged my daughter into the abyss. In this life, I don't want to be virtuous anymore. I want to go see her properly. In my previous life, after Xiao Muyuan came to ask me for help, I had someone investigate that girl, so I knew her information by heart. Mother, father, brother, help me. Help me find her. I want to see her. I brought my request to my family. My brother directly took people out of the residence, personally going to search for me. Parents wanted me to stay overnight at the residence, but I shook my head and refused. Without smoothing the road ahead, how could I? The old madam summoned me, and when I entered, I found everyone in the household was there. The old madam, Xiao Wenyan, Xiao Muyuan, Pei Wan, counted them all, and noticed one person was missing. Rua. I walked in, wearing a faint illusory smile on my face. Why didn't you invite Miss Ru? On a day like this, we should have everyone gather in the manor. Pei Wan and Xiao Muyuan's faces lit up with joy, but Xiao Wenyan and the old madam looked uncertain and suspicious. I had never taken the initiative to invite Miss Ru before. Xiao Wenyan carefully examined my expression, and finally reiterated to those seated below. Rao is not part of this household, why call her here? If they want to reunite, they can gather outside the manor. There is no need to bring her here. Xiao Wenyan still remembered what he had once said. He would never let Miss Ru set foot in this house. Pei Wan and Xiao Muyuan's expressions stiffened. I glanced over, and sure enough, saw a flash of twisted hatred in that concubine-born son's eyes. The one who said those words was Xiao Wenyan, but Xiao Muyuan had already poured all his hatred onto me. Father is right. He agreed. See, he clearly knew who said it. I smiled. Just call her over. It is rare for us to gather like this. If we don't gather today, I am afraid there won't be another chance to see this group of people together again. Some time passed after the matter of recognizing the legitimate son, and the day of the imperial examination arrived. Xiao Muyuan was quite clever and had already passed the provincial examination. This time, he was mainly going to gain some experience. I sent him off with a smile, then turned around and gave orders to the servants I had newly brought back from my maiden home. 3 days passed, and Xiao Wenyan ordered the servants to wait at the examination hall entrance to pick someone up. Unexpectedly, even after dark, the carriage still hadn't seen anyone come out. The servants panicked and hurried back to report. Xiao Wenyan went personally, only to learn from the Yamen runners that the examination hall had long been empty. The old madam was extremely anxious, and Xiao Wenyan also reported to the authorities. After waiting in vain for an entire night, they finally found me. They begged me to go to the palace and asked the empress to mobilize the imperial guards to search for him. This was because the current empress was not only my close friend from my boudoir days, but before His Majesty ascended to the throne, she and I had also forged a life and death bond on the battlefield. I went. The carriage jolted along, and I held an umbrella as I walked into the palace in the rain. Jingrong, why are you here? The empress asked me. Xiao Wenyan sent me to ask you to lend the imperial guards to find his son. I was straightforward and candid. The empress raised an eyebrow and probed. So should I lend them? I smiled. Of course. I not only borrowed men from the empress, but also told her Xiao Muyuan's location. Wang Jinggrong, do you know what you are doing? After hearing me out, the empress asked me by name. Of course. After I finished speaking, I stayed in the palace waiting for the imperial guards to find him. Xiao Muyuan, with only a breath left in him, was sent back to the marquise's residence. The servants came to report, and the empress and I listened together. Young Master Xiao's leg is broken. The imperial physician said too much time has passed, and even if it heals now, he won't be able to walk properly in the future. The person who reported left. The empress looked at me and asked, "Why? Just because of registering a legitimate son?" She didn't believe it. She remembered that I had actively facilitated this matter. I picked up the tea, watching the wisps of steam rising from the cup, my expression gentle. Mingzheng, I found Yin Zhao. Xiao Muyuan was still unconscious. After being sent back to the marquise's residence, the old madam collapsed in grief upon seeing him. Xiao Wenyan and Pei Wanyi stayed by his side without rest. Seeing this, I led my people out the door, telling others I was going up the mountain to pray for blessings. With my brother personally taking action, news was quickly brought back. He found my daughter, and the person who adopted her turned out to be one of his former subordinates. After His Majesty ascended to the throne, the whole country ceased warfare to recuperate, and many soldiers were also discharged. Know that he found her. He hurried to inform me she was in a village just outside the capital. I couldn't wait, and led a few people to ride there through the night. Years of illness had made my riding skills somewhat rusty. When I arrived at the place, I happened to see my brother waiting at the mountain path. His eyes looking at me were filled with worry, wanting to say something, but just then the sound of birds scattering came from the forest behind him. A hunter was coming down the mountain with a child. As impression, sunrise dispersed the Miller mist, like a spirit of the mountains. With a small bow on her back, she leaped through the forest, bathed in sunlight, and came before me. I stayed in a village on the outskirts of the capital. To the Xiao residence, I only said I was observing a fast. Having finally found my daughter, I couldn't bear to be apart from her for even a moment. "Do I have to go back to the capital with you? Live in those tall courtyards?" she asked me curiously. I stood beside her in fitted attire, holding an exquisite short sword in my hand and carrying the great bow I had picked up again on my back. I had been on the battlefield before. The illness in recent years had drained some of my vitality, but at least my foundation was solid. I tilted my head to look at Yin Zhao, feeling countless surges of strength rising within me at that moment. "If you want to go, then go. If you don't want to, then don't." She fell into thought following my words. "Then let me go take a look. If I don't like it, can I come back?" I answered, "Of course." From the moment I arrived, nothing in this world could ever restrain her again. "Have you ever thought about what you want to do when you grow up?" I asked her. Her answer surprised me. "Before, I thought maybe I'd become a hunter like my dad. I am really good. I can already kill a tiger now," Yin Zhao said, then seemed to recall something. "But that day I saw Uncle. He sparred with Dad. They were so amazing." Her eyes were shining. "I heard Dad call him General. I want to be a general too." I laughed, never having felt so carefree before. Then I casually undermined my brother while I was at it. "Your uncle, he is not even the most formidable. If you want to become a general, I'll have you apprentice under the most formidable general." Even my brother was defeated by her. Yin Zhao asked curiously, "Who is it?" She and I climbed to the mountain peak, overlooking the mountains below. Light spilled through the clouds. His Majesty's own elder sister, Princess Pingyang. After several days, I finally embarked on my journey back to the capital. I didn't travel together with my brother and Yin Zhao, because they had been picked up and taken back before me. I listened to the maid from the manor talking about the latest news from the capital. The crown prince under the empress was attacked during his trip out of the capital and was actually saved by a hunter's daughter. The emperor and empress were grateful, so they bestowed upon her the title of Princess Zhaoyang and adopted her under their name. A mere hunter's daughter had suddenly become the crown prince's own sister. There were even rumors that her life-saving skills had caught the attention of Princess Pingyang. Perhaps this Princess Zhaoyang might become Princess Pingyang's final disciple. This series of extraordinary experiences truly made people's jaws drop. He listened with a smile, the maid's voice rising and falling, becoming especially captivating at the exciting parts. By the time I returned to the Marquise's manor, Xiao Muyuan had already woken up. I went to see him once, only catching a glimpse of his ashen face, but couldn't see his twisted ankle under the blanket. I secretly sighed. What a pity indeed. The old madam was bedridden, recovering from illness, and I went to see her once too. She grabbed my hand and kept muttering that the imperial guards must find the culprit who harmed her precious grandson. I nodded in agreement, then returned to my room. Xiao Muyuan's leg had been broken for several months. Setting aside that he missed the provincial examination, he wouldn't even step out of his room every day, making Xiao Wenyan and Pei Wan worry endlessly. Let him go out and relax a bit. Keeping himself locked in his room all the time isn't a solution. I don't know whose suggestion it was, but the household began preparing luggage for Xiao Muyuan's outing to relax. Seeing this, the old madam actually sat up. Upon learning her precious grandson was willing to go out, her spirits lifted again. As the carriage departed into the distance, everyone in the household breathed a sigh of relief. But before they could relax for even 2 days, the attendants came tumbling and scrambling back in. The young master wanted to go to the mountaintop for some fresh air, but a tiger suddenly leaped out from the forest. It directly bit the young master to death before he could dodge. I think people ultimately have their own fate. It is just that, in my previous life, Yin Zhao was led astray into that forest, saved the wrong person, and ended up being repaid with ingratitude. No, I took Yin Zhao away first, then let Xiao Muyuan return to that forest, continuing the death he was always meant to have. The old madam spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and collapsed heavily into her chair. The pain of losing her closest loved one pushed her right to the edge of the bridge of helplessness. Pei Wan isn't here. I've sent someone to notify her. Looking at the panicked, weeping crowd, I raised my hand and pressed a handkerchief to my face. Tears fell from the corners of my eyes, but I couldn't suppress the smile at the corners of my lips. Laughter mixed with my sobs echoed through the room. I couldn't help but think of those rains, the ones that fell on me, and then fell on Yin Zhao. Now, there is no Zhua, only Yin Zhao, only Princess Zhaoyang. The attendants didn't dare rescue anyone from the tiger's jaws, so they could only report to the authorities and wait for the soldiers to mobilize. But assembling the men took a day, and by the time the soldiers brought the remains down from the mountain, all that was left was some fragments of a palanquin and some scattered bones. Pei Wan went with Xiao Wenyan, and when she saw that piece of broken bone, she let out a shrill scream before collapsing. Xiao Wenyan was also sobbing uncontrollably. His memorial requesting the heir title had already been drafted. I didn't go. My health is poor, and I can't handle too much shock, so I stayed to attend to the old madam's illness. The scalding medicine flowed down her throat. I smiled and looked out the window. Today is a nice day. There is sun, no rain. The Xiao family has no legitimate son again. Not just the legitimate son. This time even the illegitimate sons are gone. The clan elders started nagging in Xiao Wenyan's ears again, suggesting he adopt another child. Although from a side branch, it is still better than having no heir. Xiao Wenyan was of course unwilling. If he were willing, he wouldn't have hinted to me again and again back then that he wanted a legitimate son with his own blood. As for the side branch, possibly also sharing his bloodline, Xiao Wenyan. How is that the same? I sighed and said. But now with the clan elders, Wenyan, my health is failing. Why not let concubine Wan try again? Pei Wan hadn't had any good news since giving birth to Xiao Muyuan back then, 12 years. Was it because the contraception was done well? Or I looked Xiao Wenyan up and down, my eyes full of scrutiny. The old madam lay in bed, her voice weak and hollow. Let Pei Wan try again. If it doesn't work, then find another. Xiao Wenyan abruptly stood up and cut off his mother's words. Who knows if he heard something he didn't want to hear. But Pei Wan also understood that the current situation didn't allow her to grieve anymore. Otherwise, she might end up with another sister to share resources with. So seeing my health improve, Pei Wan even handed the household management back to me, focusing solely on making another little heir with Xiao Wenyan. For this, Pei Wan didn't hesitate to find some secret medicines from the previous dynasty. 1 month passed, no news. 2 months passed, no news. That night, as I was preparing to rest in my room, I suddenly heard what seemed like a shrill cry coming from the darkness outside the door. After quite a while, the servant beside me finally came to report. Lady Wan used too much of that secret medicine from the previous dynasty, and the Marquis seems to be not working anymore. What kind of not working? I asked. The servant looked embarrassed. It is just, down there, it seems to not work anymore. Oh, I understood. So the bull ate too much medicine and overdosed to death. A gag order was issued in the manor. Xiao Wenyan forbade anyone from spreading this matter further. But after that day, he never went to Pei Wan's courtyard again. Yet, by not going, the matter of him having no heir kept tormenting him. It wasn't just about having no heir, he didn't even have a single biological child anymore. Rumors started swirling in the capital again. And one night, Xiao Wenyan even came to my room with a gloomy face. I looked at him in astonishment. You want me to bear one? Only then did Xiao Wenyan seem to realize I could no longer have children. There were only 2 women in the entire manor, yet not a single useful one. Looking at his expression, I could roughly read what was on his mind. But Xiao Wenyan was truly frustrated, so someone must have given him an idea. He started spending his nights at the pleasure houses. After taking her medicine, the old madam asked me, Wenyan still hasn't come back. I suppose she had also heard the rumors I had let slip. I shook my head, she sighed, but couldn't really say anything. She couldn't say anything to Xiao Wenyan, and even less to me. She looked at me, and the guilt in her eyes seemed to have grown just a tiny bit more. But on closer inspection, the dissatisfaction was still greater. Unable to bear children, yet still occupying the position of the head matriarch. She wanted me to find a few concubines with clean backgrounds for Xiao Wenyan to take in. At least that would be more respectable than him running off to the pleasure house every day. Before I could answer, a servant rushed in and interrupted. Old madam, this is bad. The Marquis has been carried back. The old madam immediately pulled me up to sit with her. What happened from the pleasure house? Could it be? An ominous premonition arose in her heart, but she worried too soon because things could get even worse. Old madam, it wasn't the pleasure house. It was the Southern Wind Pavilion. Xiao Wenyan was carried back from the Southern Wind Pavilion with his backside all bloody. Because the bleeding from behind wouldn't stop, I even sent a token into the palace to summon an imperial physician. The imperial physician hadn't received any gag order, so right in front of the old madam, the imperial physician pronounced Xiao Wenyan's death sentence. The kind where both front and back are dead. The hottest news started spreading through the capital. Marquis Xiao fooled around at the Southern Wind Pavilion, injured his vitals, and now neither his top nor bottom works anymore. After hearing this, the old madam of the Marquis Manor was directly angered to death, died with eyes wide open. That last line was mixed with the gloating voices of mockers. Scram, all of you scram. Xiao Wenyan shed his usual gentle demeanor. his face now filled with fury. He didn't understand that day he had clearly gone to the pleasure house. So why, when he finally woke up, was he at Xiao Wenyan thought of that night? And his face began to twist with rage. He felt someone was scheming against him, but he couldn't find out who, because he had no time to investigate at all. He was busy handling his mother's funeral affairs. I completely collapsed from illness, due to the news that my husband went to Nanfeng Pavilion and angered my mother-in-law to death, truly unable to manage these mundane matters. So another woman in the manor was forced to be pulled out by Xiao Wenyan to take charge. But Xiao Wenyan hated her. That is right. I could see it clearly. There was actually hatred in his eyes when he looked at Pei Wan. Perhaps Xiao Wenyan thought that if Pei Wan hadn't insisted on using that secret drug from the previous dynasty, how could he have damaged his vitality, ultimately having to resort to visiting brothels and finally being set up by someone. So Xiao Wenyan blamed his mother's death on Pei Wan. In front of many guests and servants, he denounced Pei Wan, who had managed the affairs, as an unchaste and unfilial slut, actually seducing her own master with such filthy things to compete for favor. Pei Wan wept bitterly, and even Rujie outside the manor wanted to come in to plead for her. Although Xiao Wenyan didn't allow her into the manor, his attitude toward her was indeed still quite good. So much so that Rujie barged into Xiao Wenyan's room, was enticed by the secret drug from the previous dynasty that Pei Wan had released, and nearly lost her innocence. Mother held my hand as we watched the farce unfolding below. Xiao Wenyan and Rujie were dragged out of the room by people Mother had summoned. It wasn't that the woman's clothes were disheveled or anything, because the one with disheveled clothes was Xiao Wenyan. He seemed to have become addicted to visiting the male brothel, so under the influence of the secret drug, even with a woman standing before him, what he wanted to do was hand her something that could relieve the itch and have her help him. Re seemed to be scared silly, standing there motionless with a blank expression. "Wenyan, you've disappointed me too much," I said slowly, but he couldn't hear me. So I had his new book boy take him into the room to first relieve his itch. The sounds echoed through the Marquise's mansion from the study door that hadn't been closed. And I followed Mother, walking out of here, out of this residence. By the time Xiao Wenyan had completely sobered up, the person from the palace to announce the imperial edict had already arrived. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, the emperor personally issued an edict for me and Xiao Wenyan to divorce. As the sworn sister of the current empress, in the public's eyes, I had truly endured too much. The rumors in the capital suddenly shifted, with all the criticism directed at Xiao Wenyan and Pei Wan. Even the matter of Xiao Wenyan forcing himself on his concubine's daughter from her previous husband that day spread out, making Xiao Wenyan even more furious and flustered. The emperor decreed the divorce. There was no longer any possibility between him and me, but he really needed a proper wife to manage the household now. Yet looking around, there was actually no one willing in the entire capital anymore. Rumors in the capital were rampant. But that has nothing to do with me anymore. Yinzhao came to find me to go horseback riding in the outskirts of the capital. "How has Mother been lately?" she asked somewhat cautiously. Her adoptive father treated her very well. She called him Dad. So naturally it wouldn't be appropriate to call me Mum anymore. Thus she could only call me Mother, but her calling me Mother was different from all the mothers I had heard before. Hearing her call me that, I only felt my heart turn soft and sour, with an urge to cry. "I am in a great mood," I answered her, so great that I felt this was the happiest moment of both my lifetimes. Me daughter stood right beside me on her horse, her posture with head held high like an eagle soaring through the sky. A carriage passed by nearby. As if hearing our voices, the person inside lifted the curtain. It was Xiao Wenyan. He had already packed his valuables and was leaving from the outskirts today, heading back to his hometown away from the capital. The rumors were too unfavorable to him. Staying in the capital by force no longer had any meaning. "Mother," Xiao Wenyan's eyes widened, staring at the freshly revealed mother and daughter before him. You are Yin Zhao. Xiao Wenyan's mind worked extremely fast. As if something had suddenly been confirmed, he rushed down from the carriage in wild joy, running toward us. His excited hands grasped wildly in the air, as if trying to pull me and Yin Zhao down from our horses. Just then, a fierce whip lashed out, striking his waving hands down from the air. Xiao Wenyan froze, staring at his biological daughter in disbelief. He never would have imagined that the moment he met Yin Zhao, she would whip him. Rebellious daughter, he murmured. The next second, he was forcefully pressed to the ground by the guards behind Yin Zhao. How dare you? How dare you offend the princess? Xiao Wenyan's face was pressed pathetically into the dust, disbelief flickering in the light reflected in his eyes. That was clearly his daughter. How could she be a princess? I dismounted and looked at the remaining carriages behind him that had already been brought under control. The short blade was unsheathed, and Pei Wan and Rugier's terrified gazes fell into my eyes. But, within that terror, there seemed to be a hint of bewilderment. I raised an eyebrow and looked at Xiao Wenyan lying on the ground. Despite being so pathetic, his demeanor had somehow shed its cowering from the heavy blow and regained a trace of his former gentle air. I laughed with rare satisfaction. After all, compared to killing an enemy who remembers nothing, killing an enemy who remembers everything is far more satisfying. The short dagger plunged deep into Xiao Wenyan's chest. He couldn't believe it. He didn't even have time to react. I pulled the dagger out, then stabbed it in again. A voice sounded in his ear. Remember everything now. Don't be afraid of being lonely when you go down, because your mother and your damned son are already waiting for you below. Also, those two people, I'll send them down together too. The splashing blood fell onto my eyelids. Suddenly apologized to him. It is just that your good son was gnawed into such tiny pieces by the tiger. I am afraid even when he goes down there, he won't be able to piece himself together. So I didn't even leave him a cenotaph. Dug it all out, burned it to ashes along with the bones and scattered them on the stone slabs at the entrance of the princess's residence. I slammed him to the ground and for the last time brought the dagger to his neck. I want to tell you, your good son, even as ashes, still has to be trampled under my daughter's feet. Pei Wan and Rugier were scared to death by me. Before I could even stab them, the two of them screamed and then went silent. I was somewhat speechless for a moment, but still ordered the soldiers beside me to finish them off, burned them all to ashes, and scattered them all on the stone path at the entrance of the princess's residence. As for the marquise's estate, I split half to replenish the national treasury and gave the other half to Yin Zhao. Yin Zhang helped me too much. His Majesty was very pleased, saying that if there were such matters in the future, I could still come to him, and he only wanted 0.5% of the inheritance. Then he was dragged back to the palace by Mingjung twisting his arm. Although the person is no good, the money, well, it is not shabby. I told Yin Zhao to accept it. After all, the Xiao family owed her. Yin Zhao threw herself into my arms and asked me, Mother has done so much for me, but I can't remember anything. She seemed somewhat guilty. I touched her face and smiled at her. Don't feel guilty. You don't need to remember anything. The past cannot be chased. It is enough for me alone to remember. Not one more person needed. Princess Joyang's future only needs to be bright and brilliant. Another year passed, and the Hu people from the border came to invade. Princess Pingyang requested an imperial decree to take Yin Zhao to the border for training. Go, child. I saw her off at the city gate. A young eagle must fly high. I cannot hold her back. In fact, I actually wanted to go too. It is just that no one agreed. My body couldn't recover in just 1 year. Yin Zhao embraced me. The armor was ice cold, but my heart was tender and warm. Mother, wait for my triumphant return. I will wait for her triumphant return. At its heart, this story is about how virtue can be a killer. Wang Jingru's tragedy in her past life wasn't that she was too kind, it was that she treated virtue like a suit of armor. She thought if she could just be good enough, people would treat her well in return. But here is the thing. Goodness has never been currency you can trade for kindness.